everybody, welcome back to my page. My name is Spencer, and today we're going to be talking about the real-life events that led up to the song The Way by Fastball being made in the late 90s and early 2000s. If you're not familiar with the song, somewhere in the chorus the line was, but where were they going without ever knowing the way? And that song is based off of the events that I'm about to be talking about here on this channel. Feel free to like and subscribe. I had already told the story about how the Candyman horror movie had originally gotten its story. I'm going to plan on doing stories such as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the original story for that and where that movie had kind of come from. But today, instead of talking about a scary movie, we're going to be talking about a song and the unfortunate scary events that kind of led up to it. So, today we're going to be talking about two people, which was an elderly couple that had gone missing and unfortunately was found deceased. And it is a very sad story, but it is unfortunately what had happened. So again, my name is Spencer. Welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be talking about Leila and Raymond Howard, I believe was their last name. So Leila and Raymond Howard had gone every year, or virtually every year, to a day festival out in, I believe it was near Temple, Texas, and they lived in Salado, I believe is how you say that, Texas. So it was a very close distance. I believe it was only about 15 miles away, and they had gone every year. Their family knew about it. It was nothing out of the ordinary. So, you know, they start packing up. They getting ready to go. They get everything in their car. The next day, they head out. They're going to Temple, Texas, so that way they can go to this day festival. However, before they had actually left, their son had gone to Leila and had voiced concerns saying, hey, you know, I'd really like to drive you. It would be much easier. It'd be much safer if you just let me drive you out there. I really don't want you guys just out driving around. I would feel much better if you just let me drive you. And of course, Leila, the mom, would go, you know what, it's fine. We go every year. It's not that big of a deal. We'll be back. Have a good day. And so, against the son's better judgment, he just kind of went, all right, Mom, you go ahead and you go do you. Dad, we'll love you. We'll see you guys when you get back. But the thing that was different about this year than prior years is not only were both of them starting to suffer from a mental disease called Alzheimer's, Leila had actually just got done recovering from a brain surgery. And so their mental state had been declining for quite some time. And so, even though they were not happy about them going out and driving around on their own, there wasn't really anything that they could do. So, the next morning, they get all their stuff together, they take off. Well, by later that afternoon or the next day, they hadn't heard from them. And keeping in mind, this is in 1997, I believe in July of 1997, so you couldn't just call them, you couldn't just text them, you couldn't, you know, get their location from their iPhone because they didn't have them. And so there wasn't really a way to get a hold of them. And obviously that was very concerning for the family since they were not all mentally there and really might have needed some help. So about 3 days later, yes, they had already contacted the authorities, but now they were starting to put out ads in the newspaper saying, hey, we don't know where our parents are. We really need people's help finding them. So the authorities and the newspaper, they end up getting this 1,000-mile wide search looking for this elderly couple. At this point, you know, 3-4 days have gone by. Nobody has any idea where they're at. And because of the fact that this was in the 1990s, there wasn't really a whole lot of communication between the two states on missing persons or routine traffic stops. And at one point, Leila, who was driving, had gotten pulled over by a law enforcement officer for driving at night with her headlights off. And of course, you know, he goes up, he talks to Leila, gets their information. They give them their, you know, license, insurance, registration, everything looks okay. And, you know, they kind of send them on their way. Well, about 30 minutes later, they were pulled over again for not lowering their high beams and essentially running their high beams on a cop. So they pulled them over and were like, hey, you know, you got to turn off your high beams when you're driving. And they were like, okay, sure, no problem, sorry about that. And again, they kind of sent them on their way. Thing was, both of these traffic stops had happened in Arkansas, 500 miles away from Salado, Texas, where they had come from. So they were way off the beaten path. They had no idea where they were going. Obviously, their cognitive functions were starting to show that they were having issues. They were way off track. But again, the communication between the two states was pretty mediocre at the time, given the fact that it was in the 90s. And so, like I said, second cop goes, all right, cool, have a good night, sends them on their way. Well, eventually the family does end up getting a hold of newspapers and news stations, and we're like, hey, our parents are missing. We have no idea what happened to them. We need to find them. And so the news channel goes, hey, we're going to run this article, and we're going to talk about it on our network and talk about this family that's missing. So they come out and they say, hey, Leela and Raymond Howard are missing. We have no idea where they are. Their family's really concerned. We need to help find them, so on and so forth. So they do this giant search. There's helicopters. There's dozens of officers. Everybody's looking for them. They're talking about it on the radio. They're talking about it on the news channel. They're talking about it in the newspapers. Nobody can figure out where they went. And of course, the family's telling everybody, like, hey, look, they both have Alzheimer's. Leela just got done trying to recover from a brain surgery. There's a lot of factors here. Like, everybody just please be vigilant, pay attention. If you see anybody that matching this description, please let us know. Well, at one point, it was even reported that somebody that worked at a local Walmart in Arkansas had reported seeing them coming in the door that day, but of course didn't really think anything of it, and of course didn't have any real conversations with them. And so, again, nobody knows where they are, nobody knows what happened to them, and where their vehicle is at, like nothing. Well, unfortunately, where things take a dark turn is on July 12th, 1997, there would be some hikers that were walking around in a forest out in Arkansas and would come across the couple's vehicle. And the couple's vehicle had been found to have careened 25 feet off of a cliff and wrecked down off this 25-foot cliff. And Raymond Howard was unfortunately found deceased in the passenger seat, and Leela was found deceased slightly farther down in a little ditch, still holding on to her purse and her keys. And so I'm not exactly sure what led to her being outside of the vehicle. I'm not sure if she was thrown from the vehicle. I don't know if she'd crawled out on her own. That part I'm not entirely aware of. So, of course, naturally, they get a hold of the family and they're like, hey, we're sorry to tell you, but we have found your parents and they are deceased from a car accident. So they launched this investigation. They're trying to figure out what happened. And when the police officers went out and did the investigation on what could have possibly happened, they found that there were no skid marks, there was no foul play. It quite literally just looked like she was driving down the road, kind of lost track of what was going on, was on autopilot, whatever you want to call it, and had just straight up careened right off the road. And not only given her declining mental state, but the fact that she was probably driving at night and was already having problems on multiple occasions, due, obviously, shown by routine traffic stops. And so it was more or less just that, she either wasn't paying attention on autopilot, whatever it was, and just kind of drove right off the cliff. So, of course, they told the family, they're like, hey, we don't suspect any foul play. There were no skid marks. It quite literally just looked like she just kind of went off the side of the road, and, of course, the rest is history. So the family was obviously very devastated by this, but at this point it had become national news. And so people had put out on the story like, hey, I'm sorry, but they were found deceased. This is what happened. This is what we're being told by investigators. And that's kind of where it stopped. And like I said, the family was devastated. It is very unfortunate. And my heart goes out to the family of Leela and Raymond that, I'm sorry that your parents had to perish like that. It is unfortunate. And I hope that eventually you guys will heal from that. In either case, Fastball was a group at the time who had heard about the story, and they tried to make essentially a memorial song, which was called The Way, and they put it out as kind of like a, like I said, like a memorial to the fact that they had passed away. And it ended up being their, blowout release. Everybody loved the song, even though a lot of people, like I'm doing now, still just didn't know what the story behind it was. And so it became this big deal. Everybody heard about it. It hit national news. The band was covering it, so on and so forth. It was like their blowout hit. And that's why we have the song Fastball had put out called The Way. So feel free to listen to it. You can find it on Spotify, YouTube, any of those other types of areas where you might find music at. And that's going to be the story for today. So I hope the next story that I'm going to do on YouTube is going to be the original story behind what started the movie Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Obviously, all of these are very unfortunate circumstances, but they ended up inspiring songs, movies, a plethora of things. So again, that was the story for today. Rest in peace, Leila and Raymond Howard. Sorry to the family, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the next one. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I will obviously keep putting out content and trying to do what I possibly can to make sure that everybody's liking what I'm putting out. And if you didn't know the full story to the song, make sure to go in the comments and just go ahead and comment, rest in peace, and I will know that you watched the video all the way through and that now you know the story behind that song. So again, feel free to like and subscribe. Feel free to comment if you got to the end of the video. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one.